President Biden making some bizarre comments about gun control as he says he does not think we need to harden schools. It's been 1 week since the horrific events in Uvalde, Texas, where a teen gunman went on a rampage inside a classroom, killing 19 students and 2 teachers. The president says the country needs to act, but so far, he hasn't even talked to Congress about solutions. And Democrats so far don't seem interested in Republican proposals like boosting school safety or addressing mental health. Instead, Biden's attacking the most popular handgun for self-protection. Listen.
A 22 caliber bullet will lodge in a lung. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high caliber weapons is there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting. The Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute.
The White House trying to clean up what Joe meant while saying he doesn't believe in hardening schools.
He supports a ban on sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and expanded background checks to keep guns out of the dangerous hands. He does not support a ban on the sale of all handguns, to answer your question. I know there's been conversation about hardening schools. That is not something that he believes in.
And Vice President Kamala Harris offering up one of her signature word salad responses while calling for an assault weapons ban.
I will say, as I've said countless times, we are not sitting around waiting to figure out what the solution looks like. You know, we're not looking for a vaccine. We know what works on this. It includes, let's have an assault weapons ban. An assault weapon is a weapon of war with no place in a civil society.
Greg, so the president is not supporting hardening schools after you saw what we saw last week. Just out of pure tactical reasons, why going into a negotiation wouldn't you say, yeah, let's put hardening schools on the table, let's deal?
I'll explain to you what's wrong with his thinking and the answer to this. If you want a solution that you can trust, the person that is venturing this solution has to have more than one variable, or you don't trust them. So if you're a single variable thinker, which is what Democrats are about guns, that means that everything they say will be guns. That's their ideological cause. No one can trust them because they know what their answer is going to be. It's always going to be guns, guns, guns. And we know that maybe that rifle, the accessibility of that rifle plays a role in the role of this mass shooting because the person got a hold of it and used it, all right? But you end up in this idiocy where Biden finds himself, where he's banning just common handguns and dismisses hardening targets, which is just, it only makes sense if you are clinging to one variable in kind of his feeble brain. And this is why gun control dies, because you can't trust the people who are pushing this forward. The solution should tackle 3 variables. Should be more than a gun control issue, right? You should look at social media, mental health. How are schools addressing mental health? And then you can look at the guns. I would be totally interested in raising the age to 21 for this rifle if it was done not as a law, but as an experiment, right? 6 years, try it out. Compare it to the previous 6 years. It's hard to get variables out of this because mass shootings are, even though they're not rare enough, they are rare. You can go for 6 years without any. But the point is, you got to treat it not like a law, but like a test, because then that removes the what do you call the slippery slope thing, like, oh my God, what's next? And then you could also do the same thing with social media age minimums, because that would be really interesting to look at too. And then you could look at better mental health services at schools. Why aren't we testing all of these things? It's because we get stuck in this single variable thinking where you have the leader of the free world saying absolute gibberish, because he can't leave this is a single idea prison. He can't get out of it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Can't get out of his own prison. Judge, when
I've been there.
Yeah, usually they don't like cash bail, so it should be pretty easy for him to walk. Judge, when you hear the president say, you know, maybe we can work with the Republicans on this, and then utters out this gibberish about banning handguns and 9mm handguns.
Well, look.
Why would you deal with a guy like that?
Well, no, but this is the guy who said, I'm going to unite everyone. I'm going to be the adult in the room. We're going to make this work. No, he doesn't want to make it work. He needs something to up his numbers. So he comes out with an idea. He goes in his corner, and that's basically the end of it. This is what I'm going to do, and I don't want to do anything else. And all you Republicans just don't want to work with me. Let me just say a couple of things. Does removing guns limit the number of crimes? I would like you to look at what's going on in the city of Chicago, which just this past weekend, there were 9 people killed, and I think there were something like, I don't know, 40 shot in Chicago. Guns are illegal in Chicago. So you really have to look at when is the last time we analyzed this stuff. The last time we had a ban on assault weapons, I remember, I was a sitting DA, I was in favor of it. And then we found out that there was no discernible change in crime when we banned assault weapons. Now let's look at California. Crime is going up, shootings are going up, whether you're talking about Compton, Los Angeles, any of these places, and it's where you have the toughest gun laws in the country. So the vast majority, and people need to understand this, of crimes that are being committed by people who have illegal weapons. And this is a stat. Less than 2% of all prisoners had a firearm obtained from a retail source at the time they committed their crime. So stop with this background check and all that. But if you want to, let's come together on that. You want to come together on that? Maybe let's do it. Let's make a deal. But this guy's too simple to make a deal. I have a couple more things. The Constitution. This is the Second Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and this guy is so ditzy. He said you couldn't buy a cannonball when they passed the Second Amendment. He is so limited in his historical references. There is nothing that prevented anyone from buying a cannonball when they wrote the Constitution. And my last comment is this. The gun-related deaths that we're talking about are not only most of them in cities where gun crimes are illegal, but they're also in cities where we've got individuals who can get guns, who are part of gangs, and in the end, half of the gun crimes are suicides. And that's all I have to say.
Why won't he put mental health on the table?
Here's...
Jessica.
Mental health is a conversation that Democrats are having nonstop, and it's Republicans who, to Greg's point, are single variable-minded.
Yeah, but not about this.
Single variable-minded, like in Texas, where Greg Abbott has voted against mental health expansion. He doesn't want to have Medicaid expansion also, which would make sure that the poorest people have access to mental health resources. Democrats will never not have a conversation with you about these other issues. They will also talk about the specifics of what happened. And you want to talk about Chicago, that's a different block. We're going to talk about Chicago. We need to talk about school shootings that are carried out with AR-15s. We had 400,000 AR-15s that were owned by Americans between 1994. Today, there are 20 million. Dan Crenshaw was being interviewed, the congressman, about whether we have a gun problem here. We have 300 million people and 400 million guns. If the founding fathers were around today, do you think they would have said, we did this, yes, so people can have more than one gun. People can have 8 guns, 15 guns. You don't.
I say yes.
You don't speak for the founders when you say that.
Neither do you.
Why have we changed?
It's an absolute.
In 1994, when we got the assault weapons ban, we did have the kind of data then that Greg is talking about. You want to say, put it in for 6 years. We know that the number of mass shootings were lowered by 43%.
Okay.
Then it was allowed to sunset by George W. Bush. This is something that can be done again. People do not need this for just walking around. It's unnecessary, and kids are dying because of it. And there were 19 cops standing in the hallway. I hear all the time, there's nothing more valuable than a good guy with a gun. There were 19 good guys with guns that stood in the hallway as kids were still calling the police.
Okay, but you're going to get people at home who are going to say guns don't kill people, people kill people.
But access to guns allows them to.
Hold on. So what about the red flag laws? I find the more Republicans I speak to, the more openness there is in some parts of the country to the red flag laws. When you talk about bringing back moral values, which many Republicans are doing in the wake of this, you have to talk about the fact that you're talking about glacial change. People want to know what could have prevented a shooting like this. Could red flag laws have helped? The Wall Street Journal wrote a piece, Red Flag Laws Are Good as the Data, basically pointing out that this was a person who broadcast over private messaging on Facebook, which Facebook has said that he was going to go kill his grandmother and that he was going to go shoot up an elementary school. That data, the Wall Street Journal points out, is only private to those he wanted that private from. How about the social media companies' accountability in tracking that kind of conversation over social media? Maybe there's some bipartisan support for these red flag laws that could identify an unsteady person that owns a gun legally or illegally.
We actually tried this. I mean, Donald Trump, who was a New York liberal before he was a Republican president, was for gun control. And he tried with the bumping bump stocks and red flag laws, and fellow Republicans told him it will not
Red flag
pass.
laws didn't work in Buffalo. So, and I actually think if
19
someone holds
states
up
have
a bag
adopted
of
them.
dead cats, don't sell them a gun if you got a bag of dead cats. I think we can agree on that. All right?
Where did that come from?
The guy was holding up a bag of dead cats.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
the shooter in Texas. He's a psychopath.
And by the way, has
You
anybody
shouldn't have sold a gun to a guy like that.
Has anybody asked how he could afford those guns, how he could afford
people
the
have,
truck?
and they can't.
Where
the
did
ammo.
this money come from?
Well, the media won't pursue that.
Right.
Absolutely. Up next, President Biden trying to convince Americans the economy's good, and his policies drive us into the ditch.